What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. We have the latest piece of hobby drama to come across the desk. And I actually, to be honest, after kind of digging into this a little bit, I really don't know that there's a ton here. But I wanted to use this as an opportunity to kind of dig in and do a quick little review of something. And that is, what do the various grading companies actually guarantee versus what they don't? So we'll talk about that in the back half. So before we dig into that, let's hop into the primary reason for this video. And that is Alt selling platform is suing Beckett grading company over a Steph Curry BGS 9.5 gold rookie from Topps Chrome. Alt definitely has some sketchiness in their past, shall we say. We will leave it at that for the purposes of this video. But they are suing Beckett over this Steph Curry. And you may say, well, why are they suing Beckett over this Steph Curry? Well, they purchased this card, had it for a little while, and said, you know what? We don't like that BGS slab. We don't like 9.5s. Let's send this thing to PSA and get it in a PSA slab. PSA gets it, they look at it, and they say, this card is trimmed, gentlemen, ladies, people. Can't grade it, trimmed. That's a problem. They send it to Beckett. Beckett says, those guys at PSA were right. This card is trimmed. Here's the problem. And the key piece, and I'm surprised that this even got off the ground with this thing even in there. Point 51 here. Alt cracked the card and then sent it to PSA. So when it got to PSA, I assume it was in a card saver. Maybe they magged it, even though you're not supposed to. Sent it off to PSA. Who's to say nothing happened with that card after it got cracked out from the time it got sent to PSA? Did it? I have no idea. Did it not? I have no idea. Was it trimmed when it got into the Beckett slab? I don't know now because you cracked it out and then sent it to PSA. So anyone worth their salt, and I'm no lawyer, I did not stay at Holiday Inn Express last night. I have watched every episode of the early seasons of Law and Order, probably about 17 times each. Anything involving Jack McCoy or Ben Stone, I'm your man.
Nothing is inevitable, Mr. Kamen, except your residency at one of our correctional facilities. You're a liar, and now the jury knows you're a liar.
So that's where my legal expertise ends. Get Lenny Briscoe on the case here. He would probably say, this all went out the window the second you cracked it out, because who's to say what the hell happened to the card after it was cracked before it got to PSA's hands? Whether everything was fine or not doesn't really matter. That's the hole in this entire house of cards. It's going to come tumbling down. So I don't really think this has a ton of room to stand on. Once again, not legal professional. But regardless, PSA determined the card was trimmed. Beckett agreed, card was trimmed, but there's this little loophole in here. Now, where I kind of wanted to take this is, because like I said, I don't know that there's really a lot to stand on here. Yeah, it'll be a fun little story. It'll make the rounds. Oh, Alt sued Beckett. Oh, Beckett. Oh, Alt this and all that nonsense. And I get that. But what I wanted to take this opportunity to was to kind of remind everybody what the four main grading companies' standards and practices are when it comes to something like this. Because as we all know, stuff like this does happen. A grading company, shocking, I know, sit down for this one, not perfect, and will miss things and make mistakes. Some companies have written guarantees stated, spelled out, that says exactly what they will do in an event of a situation like this. You purchase a card, it is later found to be altered, trimmed, nonsense, whatever. What happens next? Is the grading company liable for any of this stuff? Is there any sort of guarantees in place? Let's start with the company in question. That is Beckett. This is from their frequently asked questions page. Here's Beckett's guarantee. Let me zoom in on this so you can read this wonderful fine print. I'll leave this up on the screen here for a minute. If you want to take it all in, you can. You can pause the video and read along. I'm just going to kind of talk about it real quick. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. None of it talks about, yeah, you know what? We'll cut you a check if something went wrong. That statement is not in there at all. At all. So Beckett has no formal written guarantee in regards to monetary value returned to you if there is something wrong with the card in the slab after the fact, like it was found to be altered, tampered with, etc. Now, will they attempt to make it right? Sure, I'm sure they'll do something, but they technically don't have to. And you might not agree with what they come up with, but you don't really have a lot of room to stand on this one. PSA. PSA is most famously known for this. They are, well, for a long time, one of the few, once again, top section here, that actually have a written guarantee if something is found fraudulent after the fact. This has come up in stories in the past. Now, people will argue about the amount and all that. It all comes down to declared value, secondary market value, what the issue is. There's a lot of I's to dot, T's to cross, hoops to jump through, all that legal nonsense. But they do have a written guarantee in place that spells out exactly what would happen in an instance like this. So they are one of the, for the long time, they were the only ones that had a fully written guarantee. Now, a lot of people will say that's why PSA commands such a premium on some stuff. I don't know that I agree with that or not. It is nice to know that it is there. To be frank, I don't deal in high-end enough cards for that to truly be a factor. Would I be mad if my Luka Optic Hollow came back trimmed? It's a $400 card. Sure. Am I going to lose my house over it? No. Is it nice to know that that guarantee is there? Yes. To me, that comes more into play when you were talking about the ultra high end and the sums of money that are getting tossed around are in the much larger denominations. So that's PSAs. CSGs. There's a lot more wordy, but essentially, and you double check me on this, it's basically pretty similar to PSAs. And when I say pretty similar, I'm just meaning that as in they have a written guarantee that states there's all sorts of different bullet points and check marks and flow charts and everything else that you got to kind of flow through there. And I won't bore you with the details, but the end result is that CSG actually has a guarantee written in place. And if something happens, this is the path that we will follow versus it being a little bit more nebulous. SGC. They have one as well. Let's zoom in here on number 9, I believe it is. This one right here. Now, this is where we get a little, you know, a little weird, I guess. SGC's written policy is they have no liability whatsoever to the customer for the greater determination of authenticity assigned by SGC to any item. That is what is written in their terms of service. What they state is different. Peter, I will say friend to the channel, multiple time guest of the channel, has said on my platform and many others and many other avenues that they stand by their grades, and if something goes wrong, they will ultimately take care of the customer. Now, I have seen and heard examples of that. I have not really seen or heard examples of that not being the case, to be fair to them. However, it is not in writing. Yes, I believe Peter would take care of an issue and make sure that the customer was handled correctly. But just so everyone is clear, that is not SGC's written policy. That is Peter's stance, but it is not the written policy. It would be nice. It would be really nice. I'd feel warm and fuzzy. I'd sleep the same, but I'd feel warm and fuzzy for a little bit if the written policy matched their actual actions. Now, in this case, their actions are good, but just be aware that they do have a written policy in place that they could technically pull out and say, well, it says right here, we don't really have to. Now, do I think they will do that? No. But I love you, Peter. Peter might not always work at SGC. Maybe he'll go there. Maybe he'll go to the grave there, but eventually he's not going to work for SGC one way or the other. Then what happens? I do believe Peter would take care of the customer as he has in the past, at least from everything I have ever seen or heard. But it is not in writing. So, like I said, long story short, I don't really know that a lot comes of this lawsuit. It'll make waves. Like I said, we'll all make our videos about it. We'll all talk about it. We'll all have our little hot takes about it. But ultimately, this line right here, I think, is what ends this before it ever really began. I'm guessing maybe they just wanted to do this to put public pressure on them so they could potentially get some money back from this. I don't really know. But I don't know that they would have a legal ground to stand on in court since the card was removed from the Beckett slab, then sent to PSA. PSA evaluated it, then sent it to Beckett. So it left the slab, ended up in someone else's hands, shipped to PSA, was in their hands, shipped back to Alt, was in someone else's hands again, and then shipped to Beckett, where Beckett also said that it was trimmed. That card changed hands a lot outside the Beckett slab, and I'm doubting it had 24/7 surveillance on it the entire time from the time it was cracked to the time it ended up in Beckett's hands to agree with the assessment that the card was indeed trimmed. Like I said, I thought this was a good way to kind of just refresh everyone's memory on where the main four grading companies actually stand in regards to their stance / policies on guarantees. And will they or won't they stand behind their grades? Like I said, I believe most of the companies would want to do the right thing to take care of the customer. That's all well and good. But ultimately, it comes down to what's actually in black and white and stated in their terms of service, whatever you want to call it. So that's all I have for you guys and girls today. Fun little trip across terms and services. That was a fun little adventure I went on to prep for this video. As always, curious for your thoughts and comments down below. We will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.